Warm welcome and good day to each one of you. So nice to be here together, as always. As always, I feel a lot of joy that you are taking care of your lives in this way by coming and practicing the Dhamma. So this is the Sunday Sounds of Dhamma, and that means we'll have about 10 or 15 minutes of guided meditation. And then I'll give a Dhamma talk, and I'll try to keep it to 30 minutes. And then we'll have a bit of time for comments, questions, reflections. And just before I get started, to say that the registration is now open for there's a residential retreat happening here in Northern Virginia, May 31st to June 8th or June 11th. And that's on really deep listening, deeply receiving what's happening for us without trying to create any other state. And that's also part of, potentially, the two can be done separately, but it's also potentially part of a 9-month course on embodiment of the Dhamma, how to go from thinking about the concepts and the ideas to actually embodying them and living them in your life. And also we'll be having brunch on March 30th. That's a potluck as usual, so if you want to come, you can RSVP for that. And virtual tour of the Smithsonian Museum online on March 23rd. So next Sunday in the evening. And that's a drop-in workshop on Buddhist art and a little something about how art depicts the experiences that we have along the path. So those are the announcements for today. And yes, please go ahead and mute your mics if you haven't already done so. And I'd like to begin with a meditation on something about seeing endings, seeing cessation in our experience. But before we focus on seeing cessation, we're going to focus on just being here for whatever is the flow of experience that's happening. So you can go ahead and settle into your meditation posture. I like to begin with just a bit of rocking, a bit of movement. Loosening up any tension that you can release at this time. And allowing the body to come into a posture with the spine aligned and upright. Releasing the belly, really allowing the body to settle here and now. And just beginning to tune into moment by moment experience. Maybe thoughts, maybe sensations in the body. Just seeing if you can be present for the flow, moment by moment. Just staying curious about what's happening right now. And as you are attending to the experience of this moment, you might also begin to notice the cessation that's happening, the end of a sound, the end of a breath, the end of a thought. Beautiful. So that was our meditation for today. Hopefully not all your meditation for today. Maybe you can do a little more. But for now, we're going to transition to the Dhamma talk. So if somebody would get up and get those little sheets with the chant on it. Could you also turn off the heat here? It's just, you would just press the yellow button on that. Thank you. And I will bring up the sutta, the chant for everyone online.
That off
No. Sorry, I didn't hear what you said there, Robert. Does everybody have one? Yeah. Okay, great. So just to say a word about the chant. So this is in the ancient Indian language of Pali, and it is homage, it's saying honor to the Buddha as the person who is fully awakened. And we say that 3 times, and then homage to the Buddha, both him, the person, and awakening itself, the nature of awakening, you could say. Dhamma, the teachings, or the reality that those teachings are pointing to, and the Sangha, the great community of practitioners. So we'll chant it together, and everyone online can please keep your mics muted. And if the chanting feels awkward for any reason, feel free to just let it wash over you. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Bhutang dhammang sanghang namasami. Right now, I am looking out the window of the vihara, and I can see that there is a tree here out the window that has a small green buds on it. Yeah. And so I might think, oh, that means that spring is here. The green buds on the tree. After the winter without the leaves. And we start to have new leaves coming. But is it really like that? How do we know when it's spring? is there even really such a thing as spring? Some specific day that we mark as the beginning of spring, right? You can see it on the weather report. I was always surprised in Japan it would come so early in the year. We still had so much snow. The first day of spring. So is it really? Is it really? What does that mean to see the buds on the tree? I think also about those, I live in Alexandria here. The vihara is in Alexandria, just outside Washington, D.C. And so I follow sometimes these Instagram accounts about what's going on in Washington, D.C. And you see these very funny memes, these very funny lists of the seasons. So right now we're in the, you wish it was spring, but it's not actually spring season. And then the next week it would be, oh, it's back to winter season. And then the following week would be, okay, maybe you could have some hope now, spring is coming season, and so on. These are the kinds of jokes that we would see. Because it is like that, right? It is changing. It is changing. That's why we call it a forecast, a weather forecast, right? A prediction. But what are we seeing when I see the buds on the tree, or when you see the buds on the trees or the buds on the flowers where you are? What you're seeing is a result. You're seeing a particular state of the world, the state in which there is a bud on the tree. And our usual way of thinking about that is that it just came before. It's just the thing that came before, it leads to that, right? Winter leads to spring, leads to summer, leads to fall, and so on. And certainly what came before is important. It is part of the reason why we see what we see. But things change in an instant. Things change in an instant. There's this beautiful teaching in Zen that the true form of things is formless. The true form of things is formless. It means that we think that things are solid things are as they are. And yet, if we look very closely, and science is beginning to actually agree with us on this, that it's not quite like that. Things change in an instant. This past Tuesday night, my ex-husband died. My daughter's father, Timothy McAfee. And yeah, he is no longer in that form in the world. And Kayla said to me, Kayla was down there in Florida with him, and Kayla said to me, yeah, so one moment we were there and we were talking and we were playing crosswords and we were laughing. And then somehow another moment he's gone. Things change in an instant. So what we're seeing at any given moment is a state of the world. It is one complete state of the world, and that is very important for us to remember. That things are complete in each moment. Things are the result. You could say each moment is like a snapshot, right? Is a snapshot of a particular state of the world. So in a sense, it's a complete set every time, each time. The conditions that are present are all in harmony in some way. It's hard for us to relate to that, to the idea that there is harmony in every moment. But it must be that way. If we look carefully, we'll see. So I brought a teaching from my master, Sekkei Harada Roshi. Harada Roshi was an incredible master. He was very good at not saying more than what was necessary. And so for that reason, we were also thankful that we had the newsletter, because then we get a little bit more teaching background from him. And so this is the newsletter from fall of 2008. So just a couple of months actually after I left, after I finished my training there and went back to San Francisco Zen Center. And this is an article by Roshi called "All Things Are Complete." And I'm not going to read you the whole article, but he says, there is the expression, all things are complete. This means, in other words, that all things are complete, are the final result as they are. All people come to an end without difference or sameness, right or wrong, good or bad. This is all things are complete. And then he says, we're living in troubled times that stem from a number of factors, such as the increase in population, global warming, the gap between rich and poor, the demands of people's lives are greater than the gifts of the sun and the earth. And then he says this to close that paragraph. He says, essentially, however, all things on earth, including the thoughts of individuals, arise as something in accord with you. In accord with means, or in harmony with means, that while it appears as if you and the earth are separate, or I would add you and any other being, this is in fact actually a condition in which all such things, all such ideas can be seen as problems of your own consciousness. And he lived in that way. He lived in that way of understanding the complete interconnection of all things. It's not saying that all things are one. Sometimes it's described that way, and I wouldn't say it that way. I don't teach it that way. I think it's better to understand that there are many things that are all interconnected, that are all interrelated, interdependent. So the proper phrase, or at least from my perspective, the proper phrase is not one, not two, right? Not separate, not two, but definitely not also completely one solid block that's indistinguishable, right? There is difference. We need to be able to acknowledge both. But Roshi lived that way. And one of the times that I was in practice discussion with him, he said to me, you and I are not two. watashi to anata wa futatsu denai. And he used the word for two things, not two people. He didn't say futari, which is two people. He used the word for two things. He said, you and I are not two things. And then he was in the hospital, and we'd been taken to say our goodbyes to him, to say our final words to Roshi. He was in the hospital after a couple of heart attacks. And I went to his bedside and I held his hand and I leaned over and I said to him, you and I are not two things. And he said, what did he say? He said, thank you. Arigato, arigato, arigato gozaimasu. Over and over again for like the next 5 minutes. He said, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Mm. So when we think about what's happening within us, we need to think about it in that context of acknowledgement of ourselves as beings that are embedded in the frame of everything, of all things, that we are integral to everything. So anytime you perceive a problem between you and what's happening in the world or what's happening with another person, then you know that that is a complete set of conditions. So you have to start from that standpoint of acknowledging how it is and why it is that you are also part of that. Mm-hmm. So when you perceive, if you perceive a problem to be exclusively out there, that is a limited view. That is an incomplete view of what's actually happening. In fact, this is the great promise of the Dhamma, that we can, for ourselves, find our ability to be skillful in the world, no matter what the world is doing. We can find in ourselves our ability to be at peace and steady in responding to the world, no matter what the world is doing. So what about the path? What about transformation? What does that mean about going from being a person who is confused to being a person who is awakened? How does that work? So for that, I brought some Dogen, because while I'm on the Zen theme today, I thought I would stay with the Zen teachers. So I have this fabulous, you know, telephone book size collection of Dogen's mostly shorter teachings called Dogen's Extensive Record. And he would be either standing or sitting there in the Dharma hall, and he would give a short reflection, like after a meditation or before a ceremony was to happen or things like that. And people would be, furiously scribbling these things down, and then they'd come down to us. So we have one that I wanted to share today. This is Dharma Hall Discourse, number 364. And I want to also acknowledge Taigen Dan Layton, Roshi, and Shohaku Okumura Roshi, who are tremendous translators and practitioners and have certainly helped me on the way and helped many people by their beautiful translations of Dogen. So this one is called, they gave it the title, Spring Arises Beyond All Control. That was the title they give it. So they give the titles to the discourses because The discourses didn't originally have titles, right? It's just Dogen is starting to expound something. Yeah. So today, where the clouds are smiling, that's certainly true here in Alexandria. Today, where the clouds are smiling, and when the snow's will is bright, or you could say the strength of the snow is bright, over the mountains and forests are spring, wind, and rain. At this very time, how is it? After a pause, so this was something that he often did. So he would paint a picture of the state of the world in this moment. Then he would ask a question about it. How is it? Or some other question about it. And then he would wait. And then he would answer his own question. Because it's a rhetorical question, apparently. Or maybe there are other monks answering, we don't know. Sometimes, but not usually. After a pause, Dogen said, "Do not say that someone holds the handle of creation. The causes and conditions for proceeding on the way give rise to good karmic roots." So let me read that again. The causes and conditions for proceeding on the way, meaning the path of practice, path of awakening, give rise to good karmic roots. And I brought this this quote for you because I think we often think about it in the opposite direction of what Dogen is saying. We usually think, I make good choices and therefore I'm setting up good karmic outcomes. Or we usually think, I have had good luck, or I have some good karma from the past, and therefore I can be on the path. I can make these choices, I can do these practices, I can take these precepts. I'm doing these things. But what I hear Dogen saying here is that because there are causes and conditions, because there is a world that fits in this way, and that is changing, then you can do those things. That is what makes choice possible. That is what makes decisions possible. That is what makes path possible. Right? That it's complete in each moment, and yet each moment is going to be a different snapshot of a world with a different set of conditions. And you are one of them, right? You are one of them. And that's why it's so important to keep coming back again and again to this understanding of myself as integrated into all things. Because then I am also a condition. I'm also one who could be a cause for change, a cause for goodness in my own life, a cause for goodness in the world. Do you see? So I bring this forward in the hope that when you are aware of your life, as you are going through your day, as you are sitting on whatever equipment you use to sit on and meditate, that you begin to notice. Notice how deeply woven in you are to the fabric of reality. What are the conditions that are present right here and right now for you to be as you are? And how are they changing? How is it in the next moment? How is it in the next moment? This is what we mean by mindfulness off the cushion. this way of receiving the truths of your life. And seeing that you are so much more vast, so much more vast than what you usually think. Especially if what you think is that you is just the person who makes decisions. So study this moment of life very carefully. Things change in an instant. Where is spring? Where is spring? So I'll read you the Dogen passage one more time to close out the talk for today. Today, where the clouds are smiling and where the snow's will is bright, over the mountains and forests are spring, wind, and rain. At this very time, how is it? Do not say that someone holds the handle of creation. The causes and conditions for proceeding on the way give rise to good karmic roots. So just keep asking yourself, at this very moment, how is it? Right, friends, that was the talk for today. And we have plenty of time, it seems, for comments, questions, reflections on the talk or on the meditation. Anything that you would like to share? I can share the mic if somebody here in the room has a question or comment. Fumyo, hello. Please ask your question or make your reflection there.
I think I could do both half-half.
Okay.
Thank you for the talk. And just yesterday, when you mentioned Dogen, just yesterday he had one of these very long seminars, and this time it was on 5 ranks. And we went through this very big document of all sorts of like poetry. And there was one verse that I noted down, and I thought perhaps it's touching on some of the aspects of what you said today. And I really like the verse, so I thought perhaps I could share it in it if you'd like to say how you read it, because I think we didn't dive deep into those particular verses. This is just one of many.
Sure.
Okay. And I don't know what's the source. This is, I think Dogen has just put one of many translations into one document, but it was called Dongshan's 5 verses, and he had more 5 verses on all sorts of things. And this was the last of them. And so it said, neither falling into being nor non-being, who dares harmonize? People deeply wish to escape the stream of the ordinary, and yet after all return to sit to the warm coals and ashes. And I really like the phrase warm coals and ashes. I don't know, it just clicked. So that's the one I enjoyed, and perhaps if you'd like to share what you hear there.
Well, what comes to mind immediately is the warm coals and ashes as representing those endings. So the reason why I did that meditation on cessation or on being aware of the flow of experience as a series of endings is this way of understanding, right? This how they are connected and yet how they are also distinct states from moment to moment. So yeah, I really like that, sitting among the warm coals and ashes. Sweet. Thanks, Fumio. Did you have more? Did you have something else you wanted to ask, or are you good for now?
No, you can comment on anything on that. But I didn't make this connection with endings actually. So that was kind of nice to hear, and it almost sounds comfy in this verse, right? Like warm coals and ashes, but I don't know about that.
Exactly. Don't take it too literally. Yes. Thank you, Fumio. Okay, Claudia, you have your hand up. Tienes la mano alzada, Claudia. Asunción, ¿sí?
Maestra, esta pregunta es en cuanto a la práctica de meditativa que iniciamos. Usted decía que había que poner atención en los sentimientos, ¿no?, que surgen. Y últimamente me han dado 2 ataques como de ansiedad, de que estoy aquí, ya quiero estar allá afuera y estoy tan angustiada, pero trato de estar sentada. ¿Qué hago con esas sensaciones a veces de ansiedad, de angustia, de querer levantarme? Y ¿qué hago? Porque pongo sentimientos aquí, me empieza y quiero ver la hora y quiero que termine. ¿Qué hago con estas sensaciones que surgen en mí? ¿Cómo trato de calmar y que no surjan, o solamente las veo? No sé.
Ok. Voy a contestar en inglés, así que por favor ponte otra vez en la interpretación si quieres, ¿no? O sin interpretación está bien también. Okay, so so Claudia's question is, Claudia says, during the meditation, we were asked to be present with and observe our feelings, what's happening. And she says she's having a lot of feelings of anxiety these days. She's been having this very strong feeling of like wanting to get up when she's meditating, or like checking the time, or like this feeling of, this uncomfortable feeling of anxiety when she's meditating. And she wants to know what to do about that. So it's a good question. I think that is not an uncommon experience. And so if you can, just sort of name what you see, sometimes that can be very helpful. And by that I mean that you feel a feeling of anxiety. So you say, oh, I notice anxiety is here. Not I'm feeling anxious. I notice that anxiety is here. Yeah. And then you might check in, okay, like, oh, this feeling in my chest, I have this feeling, this burning feeling in my chest, or however it is, something maybe embodied. And you name that thing too, right? You name that thing too. Burning here. Or for me, one of the ways that I started to become aware of my body was when I would be angry and I would be gritting my teeth. And so I would just notice that, look at that, right? Just look at that and name the thing. And if you can do that again and again, you just name what's there, just name what's there, just name what's there, right? then sometimes there is a sense of, oh, right, so there's some part of me that is calm enough to look at anxiety, right? There's some part of me that is steady steady enough to say, oh yes, there is that feeling, right? And you can start to notice, oh, right, so it's not that the whole body and mind is anxiety, it's actually more mixed than that. And that's an important message for you, right? Because then you can maybe start to tell a little bit of sense of, right? In this moment, there's anxiety, but maybe not in that moment. That's one way to address it. And it's a very dry way. It's a way of what we would call labeling, or sort of intentionally setting up a sense of separation between the observer and the thing that is observed. And we're doing that as what we call a skillful means. We're doing that as a way of sort of figuratively, metaphorically creating some room, right? Creating some space, right? Even though that's just a way of talking about the mental experience. The mental experience is actually more of a flow than that, right? So the other thing I want to say is, though, if that's hard, if it's very, very strong, right? If there's so much fear, or there's so much anger, or there's so much feeling, strong feeling, that it's not possible to step back in that way and name it and look at it kind of objectively, then I would say the thing to do is to shift. Then I think the thing to do is to try to shift to something that is more pleasant, that is more comforting to the mind. Because if we get into a struggle, and this for me was very true about anger, but for many people it's also true about fear or anxiety. If we get into this kind of struggle, like I'm trying to get rid of this thing that I don't like, then you're smiling, right? Because that just makes it worse, right? That just makes the whole situation even worse. Because for one, you're adding more energy into the situation, which is already too energized, right? It's already feeling like a lot. And we will not calm the mind by fighting with the mind. And that sounds kind of silly when you say it out loud, but sometimes that's what we're doing, right? We think that we're just going to get into a fight with our minds, and that will help. But the Buddha said only do that if you need to prevent yourself from doing some harm. So if you're going to harm yourself, or if you're going to harm somebody else, then you might be very firm with your mind. You might be you might get, really strict with yourself. But in the absence of that, you pretty much are going to try not to get into a struggle with yourself. So you try to avert the mind to something that it can handle a little better. Yeah. So maybe instead of sitting, you do some walking meditation, or you go and you listen to some relaxing music, or you do whatever it is that will help, especially the physical, I would say, right? Because when the mind gets strongly fearful, anchoring the body can be hard. It seems counterintuitive, but it's actually very helpful. In fact, the Buddha also, there's a very beautiful sutta in which the Buddha says that he was in the forest at night and he's feeling really fearful because there's like tigers and stuff in the forest in India. So he was feeling very fearful, and he's like, so I determined that if I was in a particular posture, I wouldn't move from that posture. I would stay still. So if I was standing, I would just stay standing. I wouldn't like start to run. Or if I was sitting, I would just stay sitting, and like that. And he does that as a way of calming his body. But for some people, it's hard to just stay sitting, right? Or to just stay standing. So if that's the case, if you're not ready for that, that's okay. You just find a rhythm of something that is soothing enough to the body that the body will start to anchor the mind and slow the mind. Okay? Hopefully all of that's helpful. Okay, beautiful. So we are nearly at the end of our time, and we might have time for one more question or reflection. Yes, Deborah, something. Dedication.
I just wanted to comment on the discussion we just had, that one of the things that I've found really helpful in those kinds of situations is to turn to metta and to go into metta meditation. And I find that uplifting and calming. And I wanted to just throw that out there.
Yes, thank you so much. Yes, so metta meditation is loving kindness meditation. And there are many different ways to practice it. There's a recitation of a sutta. There's a way of practicing it, of just thinking about kindness and then sharing that, imagining, sharing that with different people. Or there's a way we call radiating, where you imagine it as like a light. One thing that I want to mention that I was talking to somebody about the other day, just on a practical standpoint, is if you go to the Dassanaya website, in the upper right-hand corner, there are 3 little icons. One is the YouTube. One is something else. Let's see, what's the other one there? 3 icons, she said. The YouTube, the Instagram account, reading from right to left here. And the third one is a little cloud. That's a sound cloud, and it takes you to a site called Dharma Seed. And Dharma Seed is a site where there are thousands, literally thousands of talks, audio only, recordings of talks by Dharma teachers, both guided meditations and talks, lectures like this. And there's, I don't know, about 100 or so of my talks up there. There are many other people, other teachers. You can look by different languages. There are different languages of talks also, some in Spanish, some in German, some in Thai. And you can look by topic also. You can do a search by topic. So just letting you all know that you can use that little sound cloud to go to the Dharma Seed page and have a look at all sorts of resources there. Yeah, great. Thank you, Fumyo, for sharing. Thank you, Fumyo, for sharing again. Thank you, Fumyo, for sharing the poem and for sharing there the Dharma Seed link. And yes, so metta is practice of loving kindness. So we share it. We sometimes begin by really imbuing ourselves with it, really giving it to ourselves, and then we practice sharing it out into the world. Yeah, and it is actually said to be one of the best practices for fear, for addressing fear and anger, both. Yeah, metta. All right, folks. May all of the wonderful, beneficial karmic momentum that we have put into motion today be a condition for the awakening of ourselves and all beings, that all beings might know peace in their hearts, that all beings might know compassion and wisdom. By the power of the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, and each one's efforts, may all beings be free. So wonderful to see you all. Thanks so much. Thank you, Claudia.
Muchas gracias.
Gracias, Amparo.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Gracias, Claudia.
Sí, gracias a todos.